Hello, all. Chris Brand here, and with me is Tomas Guinan from Spoony Productions to talk about Alfonzo's Arctic Adventure, a homebrew for the NES released in 2019. Welcome, Thomas. Thank you for offering your time to talk about the development of this homebrew title.
Glad to be here.
Great. Before we jump into the gameplay and commentary discussion, let's talk a bit about Spoony Productions and give the viewers some background about the game.
Sure.
For those not familiar, you are a full-time NES developer and have released 4 games, including Eskimo Bob, Alfonzo's Arctic Adventure, Golf, and Jay and Silent Bob Mall Brawl.
Yeah.
That's awesome that you can kind of ease into now being a full-time NES developer.
Yeah, it's pretty cool actually. Yeah. I also do game development, like modern game development as well. I'm currently working on the Jay and Silent Bob Chronic One Punch game. So kind of jumped into that after Mall Brawl. So it's the NES dev thing has kind of opened up some opportunities, which is great.
Kind of taking them as they come, right?
Yeah. Basically, there's some new opportunities popping up. Probably a little too early to talk about them yet, but it's there's definitely some stuff coming down the pipeline soon I'll be excited to get working on and to show people.
Brand new, unaffiliated with licensed properties.
Maybe a little bit of both. We'll
Cool.
have to see how it goes.
All right.
Yeah.
So the title of this, Alfonso's Arctic Adventure, based off of your Flash cartoon series. Can you give the viewers a short background about the source material?
Yeah. So it started out as Eskimo Bob, which was it was a Flash cartoon series that we my brother and I started in 2001, and initially put it on my own website and then on Newgrounds. Just in the whole pre-YouTube Flash era of the internet, it was pretty big on Newgrounds, and it had a pretty big following. So I've always just, I mean, having made it with my brother, it was something I've always had kind of in the back of my mind. So when I started dabbling in the NES homebrew, it was just kind of natural to use those same characters.
So, what drove you to return and make a sequel to Eskimo Bob with Alfonso now?
Honestly, I think it was just the first game. It came together so quickly. Like I started developing it. It was in 2017. I'd say I started developing in March. I ran the Kickstarter in May, and then the game was like, I think the digital release came out in June or July. And so it was that happened really quickly. Once the carts were done and shipped, I think October, um, I had just still kind of been playing with the same engine and thinking, how can I make this better? And it almost just kind of grew out of the first game and sort of
Hmm.
turned into a sequel, because it was like, I released a game, but I wasn't done with it yet. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty much how it happened.
Okay. But looking at Eskimo Bob and now your sequel, and you kind of touched on it, you use the same engine. Even though it's the same source material and this is the sequel, the games play differently. I would say Eskimo Bob is they're both a puzzler platformer, but Eskimo Bob seems more puzzle oriented, and Alfonso seems more of a platformer. I don't know if that was your intention, but did you strive out to make a difference between the two games?
Yeah, I think I did, because I wanted to, like, I think, like you're saying, like the first Eskimo Bob, there's a lot of stuff that makes the game sort of slower paced, if that makes sense. And even the physics are just a hair slower. Like when you're
Hmm.
jumping, it's a little floatier. You've got the enemies don't respawn, so you can kind of, you can kind of take your time to sort of figure out the puzzles.
Hmm.
With the second game, it sort of happened. My original thought was, okay, like what if I make a pack where you start out with Alfonso and then you got to switch to another character who was like Bob. So it was just going to be Alfonso and Magnus, who was just a sort of like, in the original Eskimo Bob cartoon, he was just this one shot
Hmm.
character in one episode that was parodying like Transformers the movie. So that's why he just looks like Bob with sunglasses, because it's kind of like the Ultra Magnus character being a recolor of Optimus Prime. So that was sort of the that was
Yeah.
the original joke was it's like, okay, I'll just we'll just have a slightly different Bob. But then I started sort of playing with mappers and putting other characters in. And I think it became a bit more platformer style because
Mhm.
in the original game, Bob has no attack. So you could only
Yeah.
attack when you switch to Alfonso, where you're starting with a character who attacks, then you're sort of when I'm designing the levels, it kind of
Mhm.
just made them a little bit more platformery combat based by default. So
Mhm.
I think that had a lot to do with it.
That kind of is interesting because that you mentioned that the difference between Magnus and Eskimo Bob, and that it's kind of shown in not just the character design but also the attack. Because Eskimo Bob, like you're saying, doesn't really have attack. He kind of can punch down at the blocks and break them. And Magnus is like this super ground punch, which
Yeah, exactly. It's a little more aggressive.
which reminds me, I didn't watch the entire series, but I did see maybe about half of them. And you have one episode where it's all of a sudden, I forget which one transforms basically into Super Saiyan, and the other one's
Oh
doing
yes.
like Street Fighter moves.
Yeah.
um, so you were kind of involved in the whole project. You're wearing all the hats. You're the programmer, the graphic artist, the musician. Was that a bit overwhelming, or do you like that kind of challenge?
I mean, I don't think it was really overwhelming. It was it's kind of fun because you have there's advantages and disadvantages to it, I think, because like the advantages you can kind of just go crazy and do whatever you want.
Mhm,
There's also sort of the disadvantage if you don't have any input from anyone else, it's hard to
mm,
balance. So I did have a lot of help, just like especially with the first game, with the second one as well. My wife did a lot of testing for
mm,
me for the levels, helped kind of rearrange things to sort of have a better difficulty curve. So a lot of the placement levels kind of got shifted around, that kind of
mhm.
thing. Tried to get my son to play it a bit as well, so I could get just my internal beta testing team basically. and I had a couple other people online check it out as well, just to sort of give some feedback. But I think if flying completely solo, it's definitely an easy trap to get into because
Mm,
you can make something that is just not intuitive to other people, but it feels entirely intuitive to yourself. So
yeah, I could see that. As far as the testing, was there equal amount of beta testing given between Eskimo Bob and Alfonso's Arctic Adventure, or was one more than the other?
I'd say Alfonso had a lot more, just because it was more like it took about a year to develop. Well,
Mm,
the first game took like 3 months, so just by default, it needed some more testing.
I see. Yeah, I was asking because Alfonso seems a little bit more balanced in its difficulty than Eskimo Bob in a sense. I was wondering if that was a result of the testing.
I think so. I think there's that. Plus, you just kind of learn from your mistakes once
Mm,
you've played the first one enough times. And I mean, when you're developing a game, you can basically at some point play it blindfolded, it feels like. So
yeah,
it's just you become extremely intimately familiar with your own game mechanics.
I could see that because a lot of developers comment that like the hard mode is really for them because they've played the game so much it's not a challenge anymore, and then they
Oh,
end up making normal as the
yeah,
easier one.
100%. Yeah, I think that's 100% true. And I think a lot of the time too, I know you see people kind of theorizing why some of like these older
Hmm.
early NES games were so difficult and stuff like that. And I think a lot of it I don't think it was so much having the sort of the theory of let's make it artificially difficult to lengthen the
Hmm.
game. I don't think that was so much the intent. I think a lot of it is literally just, you play the game so much yourself that you got to keep it interesting
Hmm.
while you're developing it. And and then for somebody coming in fresh, suddenly it's like, you're playing something that's
Hmm.
made for people who are trained for hard mode.
you know I didn't realize I was playing a mechanic wrong until way into the later part, and I think that might be why. So Magnus, his attack, um you just have to press A and B, and then he does the attack. But up until I think the first time I played through, up until maybe the last episode, I was doing it as kind of Ducktales. So I was pressing down and B to do almost like a pogo jump. So I was adding an
Okay.
extra complexity to it that wasn't needed. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I don't have to do that.
It's funny because that was actually there's a running change in the original Eskimo Bob with the cartridges.
Mhm.
The first run of them, you do have to press down and B to punch
Mm.
downward, and at some point, I kind of tweaked it and made a revision to so it's just the B button to punch.
Oh, I wonder if that's why. I have a Kickstarter version of Eskimo Bob.
Yeah,
Maybe
so it
that's why.
probably has down and B.
Okay.
Yeah, because I eventually did a when I did the second run of
Mhm.
what's the maybe it was the third run. It was a future run anyway, where I had some CN-ROM cartridges instead of NROM boards, and I just
Mhm.
thought I got a little bit of extra space for graphics, so I added a couple tweaks to the game and released and put some like flipbook animations in the
Mhm.
background. Nothing really huge. I didn't want people who had the original to feel ripped off, but but one of the changes I did was just make it so it's just like tap beat a punch because it's just little things like that. I think and I think that actually happened between DuckTales and DuckTales 2,
It
didn't it?
did. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just sort of like there's little things that you think it's like, is that extra button really necessary? I don't know. Like,
They do make, I think they make a ROM hack for the first DuckTales to get rid of the down,
okay.
combination. Um, you know, I didn't play much of DuckTales 2, so I don't know if it's a real benefit to the game, but I do see it once I figured out that I didn't have to press down with Magnus. I was like, "Oh, this is a big relief. My hands, thank you," because that it's kind of forceful. I don't know. Not everyone may play this way, but when I'm like, "Oh, push that controller," and then eventually your
Yeah,
thumb is like, "Oh."
and it does kinda dig into your hand, the
Mhm.
D-pad, when you're rolling it down like that, so
Yeah.
I can see that.
So a bit more about you and Spoony Bard. So now that you have these four NES games under your belt, Um, are you still tackling everything in C, or are you using more assembly? What's your kind of takeaway for maybe people that are currently using C in their games or thinking of getting into NES? Is C as viable as you when you first approached Eskimo Bob as you just released Marlboro?
I think so. I mean, Marlboro was still primarily C. So I mean, I think C is pretty viable. You just have to get clever with it.
Hmm.
Um, and really, it depends. Like, I don't think if someone's comfortable with assembly, I don't think there's any real advantage of them to
Hmm.
switching to use C. But it depends on what you're comfortable with. Where I'm a professional programmer anyway, so and most modern languages are C based, like C++, C Sharp, Java, all that stuff is C based. So being able to program in C is it's just a lot easier to wrap my head around. Although like there are some things I've done in assembly, like just how it's just small things like maybe how like sprite data and level data is stored, that kind of stuff. But as far as like programming character logic and enemy logic and stuff, it's just a lot easier to wrap my head around it
Yeah.
using C. So I think the biggest difference I did notice, and this was a switch I made just with the first Eskimo Bob, is when I just changed how the sprites worked and got that working using assembly instead of C because it was just so much slower in C. I think just having like the like key routines where the game is bogged down, if you can manage to rewrite that stuff in assembly, even that makes a big difference. But
Okay.
I think having the combination of both is really useful as far as just the speed of being able to develop a game quicker. I think it would take a lot longer if I had to do everything in assembly.
I could see that. It's considering you were already familiar professionally with the language, it
Yeah,
made you
exactly.
ease into it. I think there's I think you mentioned before you kind of came across Doug F's tutorials, and that's how you kind of got your foot. So, oh, I can use C. And then
Yeah,
besides that, my understanding is you just have to not use some of the higher level commands. You kind of have to make more steps. You can still do your logic, but you just need a lot of little steps rather than a higher base command.
yeah, exactly. And like, I mean, Shiro's got some documentation where he's talked about like the sort of the optimal way to do things and see like things that you wouldn't normally want to do professionally, like like using a lot of global variables instead of local and just that kind of stuff. But I mean, that stuff does make a big difference too.
Yeah. So, besides the programming, since you did the graphics and the music, what programs did you use for Alfonso's Arctic Adventure, and are those the same ones you're using today?
Yeah, pretty much. The whole time through, I basically just use YYCHR, NES Screen Tool. Um, I use the NES Space Checker a lot, just to check banks and stuff like that. And there's a map editor called Tiled that you can export CSV data, and that's pretty useful just for like designing levels and stuff. And that way I don't have to, it can just export, just an array that I can import in.
Yeah.
But those are basically what I use. It's pretty basic tools. That and just like Notepad++ for coding. That's about it.
All right.
Yeah.
Um, so, you ready to take a look at the gameplay, and we can focus our conversation more? Or do you want something
Yeah.
to add before we kind of get into it?
No, sure. Let's take a look at the game.
Okay, let's dive in. So on here, we're not going to get into it in this commentary, but on the screen there's a two-player melee that you entered into the NES compo and is available on
Yeah.
the cartridge. You want to talk a bit
Yeah.
about that? Why it's going into the start of the game?
Yeah, basically that was just sort of I always liked in the Super Mario All-Stars version of Super Mario 3 how you had battle mode. And I just wanted to have something similar to that as an option in the game because I kind of thought like having simultaneous two-player in the regular game would be fun, but it felt a little too daunting for me at the time.
Hmm.
So it's like, I'll try a mini game instead, and that's pretty much it.
Okay.
So that's sort of what the inspiration was
Yeah.
the All Star Mario All Stars battle mode.
Okay.
Yep.
Um, what the viewers might have missed is the premise of the game is basically that Bob disappears, and now Alfonso is searching for him using what Bob loves. He loves getting fish, so Bob is now collecting fish.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And the first game was very similar. Sort of you
Hmm.
collect fish to beat the level, and I just kind of tried to shoehorn a plot around it this time.
Yeah. So it's kind of looking at the difference between your NES compo entry for Alfonso's Arctic Adventure and then the game, which they both use episode 1. There are some differences. There's no secrets. There's a lot more signposts in the NES compo. Is there a reason you removed them? You found them unnecessary?
Um, I didn't think I can't remember really removing them. I think they still have, unless I changed the messages, but I'm pretty sure there's still a signpost in each level.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think there's just more of them explaining more. I think in the final game, I think you just have one. Maybe I'm misremembering.
Maybe because I'm pretty sure I only ever had one per level. I know that the level order is a little different. There's some of the and I didn't have the like there's some things like there's the maps and the secret
Yeah.
exits and stuff. Those just sort of didn't come until later in development. Um, but yeah, the compo entry is a lot closer to the original Eskimo Bob than the
Mm.
final, I think. And you can even kind of see it just in the level in the first world or whatever, the first episode of the game. Like those levels compared to the levels from the second episode and onward, um, there's a lot of the game mechanics that are sort of introduced after the start. The start is a lot closer in line to the first game, I think. And I think it was kind of like I sort of used it as the episode to introduce the other characters, and then sort of each episode after that, I kind of add a different game mechanic to try to spice it up.
So this is kind of the beginning where we can see that you kind of it's short here, but you have some branching paths in the game, and we'll see a larger branching path later. But that is something that you could do with the map that you couldn't really do before with the no map.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you could do it with a secret exit. Like I could just have a secret exit that skips you ahead 2 levels or something like that. But I kind of like that it kind of gives the player some agency so they can choose, like, well, do I want to go this way or this way?
Yeah.
Because, sometimes you might take take the other path and think, well, I kind of want to check out these levels or the levels in the path. They might seem shorter, but they might be more difficult.
Yeah.
So tried to sort of give some options like that.
So the first episode, we get to see all the playable characters. Was that always when you were planning the game? Is that how you always envisioned it, or did you have a different arrangement, like one new character per episode?
No, I pretty much always I wanted to introduce the mechanics pretty quickly, like as far as the playable characters, and then sort of the rest of the game focus it more on mechanics rather than the characters, because I just felt like I didn't want to take. I wanted to give sort of all of the characters more or less an equal chance to shine.
Yeah.
So, if you introduce them too late, then you might feel like you're missing out on a chance to use them.
I think that does make sense, because I'm thinking back to Bucky O'Hare, where you kind of get each character per world, and I always favored one character over the rest, and I never really played as the last character you get, which I think is the boy, because like he's the last to come. You have no real experience with him, and I'm like, I just used him when I had to.
Yeah, like, and that's kind of a good example. Or I'm thinking too, with a lot of the Mega Man games, you get a lot of weapons that you just never use. If you're playing Mega Man 2, I don't know about you, but I beat Metal Man stage first, and then I just use that for the rest of the game. Like, that's just how I play it. It's like, I don't know. I think it's just, and two, with this game, you don't really so much have the option of which character you're going to use, because they're based around the environments, which honestly was somewhat of a decision, but it was also just the mapper I was using. It was like, okay, I can have a different character per background tile set. So because I was using the Color Dreams mapper, and basically the main reason I used that was when I was putting the cards together for the first Eskimo Bob. I was talking to Paul from Infinite NES Lives, and he said, Color Dreams mapper is a really simple mapper, and it would not be an expensive one to use. So it's something that I think it'd be cool if people looked into it. So
yeah,
that was a lot of why I did it, just because looking into other mappers was a little bit pricier, and I was like, well, I don't need that much more. Like I wasn't planning on using extra RAM or any real complicated bank switching, so it worked for what I needed it to.
Yeah,
and I kind of built the game around that.
Excited to see where it goes after Paul releases his new board. It's pretty much all boards, and it's just depending on the program. If you're familiar with it, he's revising his board, so it's kind of like a universal board.
Yeah, I was actually speaking to him about it, and that is pretty exciting. So it should be really interesting, because then like I'm taking a look at like MMC3 and some of the stuff I can do with that now. So
it kind of opens up for developers to they could change their mind, or it's really the pricing is, I'm assuming, is going to be the same because it's one universal board, and kind of leaves you a little bit more options.
Yeah, because sort of the pricing as it was before, it's like, okay, well, if I want to do MMC3, it's going to cost me twice as much. So it kind
Yeah.
of just that in itself, knowing I'm going to have to charge customers like, $10 more or something,
Yeah.
for something that they, some people are going to understand, but a lot of people aren't. So it's like,
Yeah.
maybe I'll just work within the limits that I can for now to try to keep things reasonable. So
Yeah.
there was always kind of that thought process in my head. Of course, I kind of broke it a little bit when I did Mall Brawl, because it was it's MMC1,
Yeah.
but that was also, I wasn't doing a small run myself. That was going through limited run games. So.
Yeah. I think, yeah, like Connor, you're saying, maybe a lot of players don't know the difference. So it could be, your board could be like $4, or it can be $15 or more, depending on which mapper you're doing. Are you soldering your own chips? There's a lot of variables. And
Yeah, exactly. It's actually pretty funny, because with Alfonzo, like I released it with the Color Dreams mapper on the cartridge version, but when I did the digital release, I used MMC1 because I wanted to have it be like natively compatible with the NES Classic for people that have that hacked. Because where Color Dreams Mapper isn't really an official Nintendo mapper, it wouldn't work on it. So it was like, so I actually I ported the game over to a slightly more complex mapper that would kind of fit within the same footprint. So I actually did do two slightly different versions.
Yeah.
I mean, I basically just had to rewrite the bank switching routine. But it's just funny, because where it was kind of like, okay, it's more cost efficient to release it with this mapper, but it's more compatible for people if I release it with this one. So
yeah. I'm sorry, but you're gonna see me cheese all of these bosses.
It's all good.
So I hope people that are watching this, one, I hope the walkways, the ones that haven't played will play it, but hopefully they try to do these bosses and not cheesing them.
This is actually interesting, because I cheese this guy a different way.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But I mean, that works too. That guy is really extremely pattern based, though. I kind of started simple.
Yeah. So so now that we have all the characters and we're gonna start seeing bosses, all of these are from your Flash cartoon series.
Yeah.
I have a couple questions about the characters.
Yeah, sure.
One, what's with the one eyebrow?
It's funny, that was actually the original characters I did for the Flash cartoon. I didn't even have like a Wacom tablet or anything to draw with at the time, so I literally, but we had a scanner, so I drew it with a Sharpie and I scanned it. So that's how I originally was drawing characters. And the one eyebrow, it was meant to be kind of like a bit of a tribute to pixel art. Like when I was thinking of like the Final Fantasy games, like the early ones where you have the characters tend to have one eyebrow that's a lot more prominent. So it was sort of, I was doing that in I did that with a Sharpie, and it just sort of looked like the letters TI, really, I guess. But
okay, yeah, you can see that in the show. The penguin looks a lot like that because his eyes are vertical lines.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just very the whole thing was meant to be extremely simplistic. It was never meant to be like this super detailed animation, and part of it was just so I could make the episodes quickly. So then I just thought it was funny taking what was inspired by pixel art and then translating it back into pixel art. Was kind of fun. So that's basically what the eyebrow was. And it's funny because this is something that would only even matter to me and probably nobody else. But like, if you notice, like, I don't just mirror the face. Like, I always have the left eyebrow that's more like the prominent one. So I actually, like, from a design perspective, it's probably a really dumb thing to do, because I actually had to make like twice as many face sprites so I could have that, like, but in the show, it was always the left eyebrow that I had.
Mm,
Well, almost always. If there's some of the animal characters had different eyebrows, where they were sort of like an arch instead of the straight
yeah.
line. But any of the straight line characters is always the left eyebrow. So I kept that in there, even though mirroring it would have been it would have made a lot more sense, and most people probably wouldn't even notice. But it was just like my own personal conviction of like, no, I gotta keep it the same eyebrow.
I'm always gonna notice this now, and it's like so Outrun on the Sega Genesis, when you turn the Ferrari symbol on the back, it's stationary. But if you play on the TurboGrafx, actually, sorry, the PC Engine, because it was only released in Japan, the symbol reverses based on which way you're turning. So as soon as you see that, you can never unsee it.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's kind of like you notice it in Super Mario Kart 2, where it's
Mhm.
like you had Donkey Kong Jr. had that V on his chest,
Yeah.
and I think they were hoping that people would see that as a J somehow or something. I
Mm.
don't know, but it's just because the sprites are all mirrored, like they're it's like it's half a sprite and then it's mirrored, so they just just to save some space. But it's just, to me, it was always funny that you had that V. So I remember, like, as a kid, we were trying to figure out, like, is his name, like, is his actual name instead of Donkey Kong Jr. does it start with a V? And we were trying to figure out what this V meant on his chest. But it's like it's just funny, just some of those the
Yeah.
limitations.
I thought there was going to be some story about this eyebrow that, like, your brother or you shaved off each other's eyebrow or something, some sort of tribute.
No, it was just this. It was just trying to make them kind of look like if you drew a Final Fantasy sprite with a Sharpie. That's basically what it was supposed to be like.
And that kind of leads me into another question about the characters. And this might be my own wild interpretation too, but the show, Eskimo Bob, and it's always Eskimo Bob starring Alfonzo. And then as it goes on, starring Alfonzo becomes more aggressive. Is Bob and Alfonso based off anyone? Was there any animosity between two people, and that's kind of the driver of that?
No, it was actually I mean it's a really simplistic thing. It has a lot less thought put into it, I guess. It was like the whole originally it was basically my brother and I, we were teenagers at the time. We were just like we were playing around with the piano. We had a piano in our living room, and this was like Christmas Eve or something. It was around that time anyway. It was like 2 a.m, and we're just basically joking around. And I just, for some reason, I don't know why I said it to him, but he was just making up songs on the piano. So then I was like, just telling him like, oh, make up a song about this. So then I was like, make up a song about an Eskimo. So then he just started playing like the theme song, going Eskimo Bob, Eskimo Bob. And then like my mother happened to walk into the room, and she's like, what is Eskimo Bob? Is it a cartoon or something? And meanwhile, I was actually like, I was taking a course and one of the things I was doing, it was my first year at college, and I was taking a course, and one of the things in it was flash animation. So I was like, yeah, well, I'll make it into a cartoon. So it's and then so as we're planning this, and maybe 2 weeks later, it became a cartoon. It wasn't exactly a lot of thought put into it. We just kind of had this idea. We're just saying this stuff. We're like, okay, let's and we from the start we had this plan, like, okay, the episodes are gonna be really short and they're not gonna make any sense. But then after a bit, we're gonna have this big Dragon Ball Z parody. Like, that was just sort of from the start like what we wanted to do, which is why you kind of have these really short episodes. And then episode 13, that was the one you were talking about earlier, where all of a sudden, like, Alfonso goes Super Saiyan, and they're shooting Hadoukens and all this stuff. So it's like anyway, no, Alfonso, he just came out of, I think because originally it was just going to be It was just going to be about Bob. Although we
Mhm.
were going to have an evil penguin. That was part of the plan originally. But now this came from my dad. He sort of said like, "Oh, Bob, that's a real Eskimo sounding name, kind of like Alfonso." So we're like, "Okay, yeah, Alfonso's going to be his sidekick." That was pretty much it. It was very kind of a collaborative kind of thing. It was just sort of like my parents would say something and we'd laugh at it and be like, "Okay, yeah, we're using it," and or like me and my brother it was the same thing. We just sort of shoot ideas back and forth. Okay, yeah, we're gonna use that. We're gonna do something with it, and it was almost just kind of like making this long stupid story and then using my limited single semester knowledge of how to animate in Flash to make it happen.
So the aesthetic of the Flash cartoon, and then which this is ultimately based on. For the Flash cartoon, did it come down to the speed and you learning, or was this kind of the look you had always envisioned for the series?
I mean, it really came down to like with the whole. I basically just drew it with a Sharpie. And it's like, okay,
Mhm.
this is what this is what he's gonna look like. And we had this very the idea of almost like as soon as it's ready, it's like, okay, it works, ship it. Kind of like that idea. So it was
Yeah.
like, okay, I drew a single picture, like a lopsided Sharpie drawing. Okay, that's how he looks. I'm just gonna use that forever.
Oh yeah, that makes sense because some of your backgrounds in the show, I'm like, oh, this is just a squiggle blue, and then I'm like looking at
Yeah.
the next episode, I'm like, he reused that. That is his background.
Yeah, and actually, it's funny because a lot of those backgrounds, sometimes I reuse them. There's other times it's just like I draw the same thing, so it's like,
Yeah.
and I would, I draw a scribble of blue, and then I'd sort of use the angled brush, and I draw the little mountains in the background, and just like very simplistic, and but kind of as it went along, it was like, okay, I'm gonna just sort of little details crept in here and there, so it's like, okay, like we'll up the frame rate and improve some of the
Mm.
animations and get rid of some of the ugly gradients, make them flat. And, the mouths, like sync up the mouths better, give them a little bit, just little things like that was just kind of as it went along. So it kind of over the first. We did a lot of them in the first year, just like in 2001. I think we did the first like half of the episodes that we ever did basically in that first year. I think
Hmm.
we did 30 of them, and there was like 57 total, and it was sort of a little more sporadic afterwards. I think it was more just because it was just being done for fun, right? So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
So we're kind of at the second boss now,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking back to I think something you commented on the not during here, but in a previous interview about Eskimo Bob, that you kind of got a lot of comments back that, oh, this enemy pattern is figured out, and oh, it's so difficult. And in this one, I think the enemy patterns are a lot more understandable. Was that you reacting to those comments?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, the first game, the final boss, like it's kind of ridiculous, and it was almost just ridiculous by accident because it's not even much of a boss fight. It's just
Hmm.
you've just got a single sprite in the middle of the screen. He's just firing out like a very set pattern of sparks coming out of him, and then I just
Yeah.
have various enemies throughout the game coming in. And I think it's just because all those different enemies had different patterns that's what made it difficult. But I know a lot of people had trouble with that boss. But it was also kind of fun at the time because a lot of it was just I'll get some of my friends to try it out and watching them get frustrated with it. That's just kind of fun at the same time, right? So there's uh there's that thin line between fun and frustration, and it's trying to find the balance with that, and that's different line for different people too. So
I kind of came to that thought while playing through as you kind of go through each level. I'm like, you know, Thomas, he's kind of evil here. Somehow he found a way to merge my two least favorite worlds water and ice into one area.
Well, that was a thing I remember too with the I think it was for the Alfonzo Kickstarter. I remember seeing there was a comment someone left somewhere, and they're like, an entire game of ice physics, no thanks. It's like, but it's not really, when you play it, that's not really what it is.
No.
It's not like normal ice physics. It's more like the ice is a mechanic. But
Yeah.
it's just kind of funny for to see that, because I didn't really do any traditional slippy ice physics.
Mhm.
So, but it just, when you look at it, that's what you're gonna immediately think is like, oh man, I'm just gonna be slipping, and the whole game's gonna be annoying.
And I think there's actually, even though this level or this episode it's water and ice, I think the only really overlap in 2 or 3 episodes where you have to do both, where you're
Like where I've got the ice bucket guys and they're dumping into the water.
yeah.
There's those ones for sure. But even then, I feel like I made the ice mechanic kind of fun, because it was like, it's running, it's not sliding. So
Yeah,
it gives
that
it a
is
little bit
true.
more of a use.
There's only it's mostly you're running to get, like, kind of like here you kind of have to
like,
run to get somewhere else. And there's only a couple instances where you have to tackle running into an enemy, like, to avoid that.
yeah. And it's like there's a little bit of that whole slippiness at the start, but I don't think it's as extreme as some games. Like right there. Okay, that's doing it a little bit, but I don't know. I did want to make it fun, and it just happened to be like, okay, I got to make this game, in the Arctic, because that's what these characters are. So,
But somehow you found a way to have lava, forests. It's much more than just, like you're saying, that one comment where it's like it's all Arctic.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I mean, there's always sort of the snow blocks, but I guess they're a little sandier looking here, maybe. I don't know.
And then
the water, but
one thing we didn't really comment on, the map. You're able to kind of showcase what kind of terrain you're going to be encountering in the levels, because based on your adjacent tiles, you can see, oh, this is an underwater level, this is a snow level, or this is.
Yeah, I did try to do that, or have put a few trees around the forest levels, or some grass or something. I did try to do that a bit, or have the caves be like when you're over top of the mountain area. I just thought it'd be nice to do that, just to make it line up rather than have it feel random. I don't know, just felt nice. Those narwhals.
Yeah.
The ones in the first game, though, were so much worse.
Yeah. Actually, a lot of the enemies in the first game are a lot more aggressive. Like, these have like a set pattern. The other ones, I felt like they followed you or came after you a lot more.
They jumped when you were nearby, I think is what it was. And I think I do have a couple of them that behave like that, like towards the end of the game. And I think I even put a sign that was like, okay, no more. I'm done.
You said,
no more narwhals after this, I promise, or something like that. Yeah, but there are definitely, like, these fish are all pretty, and I think too, just where you have the slow movement in the water. I mean, water levels are annoying, so the enemies are a little bit less aggressive in there. Just because I do like the little sea urchins, though. Just felt like those were necessary. I mean, they basically look like every other sea urchin enemy in every other game, except they've got the eyebrow thing going.
One
Are you,
thing,
like, deciding which way to go here?
Yeah, underwater physics is a little frustrating to me, or like I have a hard time getting adjusted to it, so I have to kind of be like,
It's one of those things. It's like, which way are you gonna take it? And I kind of did the more, I guess, Mega Man thing, where it's like, okay, you walk slow and you jump high, as opposed to the swimming.
You're gonna see a lot of me fall through blocks, especially later. There's one episode one level where you have to maneuver a lot of disappearing blocks.
Yeah, it's funny, the disappearing blocks. Even it was like I went with the semi-solid instead of them being solid like Mega Man, and that was
Yeah.
something I kind of played with. Like I wasn't quite sure which one I was gonna do, but I ended up, I think, when I wanted to do solid ones, I ended up using just the snow blocks.
Mhm.
But I didn't use those as often. I actually found the semi-solid ones to be a little more fun. And two, I could do tricks like that elevator.
Yeah.
Just doing things like that. That was almost an accidental mechanic, and then I kind of tweaked it because it kind of pushed you up because it was like the being trapped in block physics or whatever just happened to work that way. So I was like, oh, nice. This is kind of fun. there's a few instances of that sort of thing happening. And there's the ice being annoying, I suppose. It's always weird seeing other people play your own game and seeing how they tackle things too. It's something I still find really funny.
Well, I'm stubborn, so you're gonna see me like try the same thing over and over again.
It's funny.
And that's one thing. Like, it takes a little. You may not, since you played the game so much that you might be fine with, but it takes a bit of time to get used to Alfonso's attack rather than like a sword swiping where you can be kind of late or early. The stick moving forward, I guess you have it so it's just the tip of the stick that makes the collision, because you could send out your stick too late or too early or something when the enemy's appearing, so that the stick will go through the enemy, but you don't actually kill the enemy.
Yeah, and that was a thing. If I ever do a sequel, I'll probably fix that. But yeah, that was something that was in both games, or it was just the tip.
Yeah.
Just the tip that's causing the damage. And it's funny because I don't know the way it's coded. I don't think it actually does make it better, but for some reason at the time I thought that I was being more efficient, but I don't. But then I think when I worked on Mall Brawl, and then I have the attack physics are a lot more like traditional. So it's kind of like the whole arm when you punch does damage, and I was like, oh, this actually is just as efficient as what I was doing. I don't know why. It was one of those things that's kind of like, well, it works, so I didn't really feel the need to change it.
You get used to it. At first, it's like you tackling, oh, how's this working? And then eventually you get used to it.
Yeah. I think that's just kind of, I don't know, just one of those things. It's like, you get used to your own game engine, so it's like something little like that. It's like, okay, you don't really notice it until other people say it. And it's like, oh yeah, that is a little bit weird.
The only time I really struggled with it is the final boss.
Okay.
You'll kind of see me struggle with it a little bit, because so for the final boss, when we get there, you have perfect yuck, and then you have the yuck clones, and they kind of disappear, or they come in and out, so that I'll attack too soon. You'll see the collision where I'm not actually hitting them.
Okay. Now interested to see that. It's funny because I haven't played this one as much, where I developed sort of Mall Brawl in the interim. So it's kind of like, you play it a whole lot, and so it's interesting coming back and looking at this one again, because there's so much stuff like that I can see. Probably more so with the first Eskimo Bob, where I did this as a sequel, but there's little things that I would have done differently. And I kind of have ideas for a sequel that I would like to do for this, formulated in my head. I haven't had the time, where I've been working on other projects, but it's something I would like to come back to and do a third one. I don't know how many more I'd do after a third one, but I feel like, I don't know, trilogies just feel right. I don't know.
I was going to ask you if that reason to go back to it is to kind of continue the story of Eskimo Bob, since you're not making new episodes.
Yeah, and I mean, that would be a fun way to. It is a fun way to kind of continue the story. And that's the thing. Like, I wouldn't mind making another episode at some point too. It's just all the whole, finding time kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's sort of the excuse everybody uses, I find. But it just, there's just been, especially when it comes to this, it's sort of something that sort of started out hobby level, and where I'm doing it professionally now, it feels less like I'm taking a break now if I'm doing it on a hobby level where it's professional. It's kind of interesting that way, because I used to work, like I was working on a job where I was programming, but I'd come home and I'd work on this. But lately I now work from home, so when I'm working from home, it just feels more natural to work on the projects, I'm kind of like either being paid to work on or that sort of thing. So and plus I've been doing a lot more like collaboration work with say like Interrobang and that stuff. So, but it's definitely something I want to do. Like I definitely have. I feel like I got a pretty good idea for the third game, and it'd probably be a little bit, again, more platform, less puzzle. But I think it'd almost, I think, be interesting to do it sort of like a because right now it's kind of a collect, it's you get that collectathon sort of feel where you got to collect all the things to beat the level. But it'd be kind of interesting to just do this great big game that's like a Metroidvania style thing, except you got to collect like a couple thousand fish or something. It's like you just got to get through the whole thing. I don't know how frustrating that would be or not, but I don't know. I'm just trying to think of ways to play with the concept.
This one you're going to see me cheese a lot.
This guy's not he's not that bad to cheese. It's funny, he's one of those things. It's like it looks kind of threatening at first till you figure it out, and then it's like, it's not bad.
Yeah. So the first few times I played this one, because when you do shooters, some games, the top and bottom where you have all these bricks, sometimes those cause you damage, like you can't run into them. So at first I thought you couldn't do it, so I was trying to either be super far away so that I had more time to react, or be super close so I could shoot lots of things. And ultimately, this was the way I settled on.
That makes sense. That's pretty much how I usually do it too. I think having the ability to cheese some of these guys is kind of nice too, because it's like when you don't know their pattern, it feels hard. Then you figure it out, and it's like, okay, I got it. And I kind of like that, and I kind of I feel just boss enemies. You can definitely see it in this game, but like boss enemies in general, you want to have a little bit more of a pattern that you need to learn to fight them. It's something I noticed in Mall Brawl 2, where it's like, I didn't want to have just a whole bunch of enemies. You just had a button mash to beat them. Like, making it so the bosses had some sort of strategy was a little just makes it more interesting.
And you made us up to this point think that Fenton was invincible, and all of a sudden snowballs.
Was there any levels where there was bird poop in the level with him too? Because I think that hurts him, but I can't remember. If
I think there is, but I don't think I ever got hit.
It's easier to avoid, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I think I do have a warning though, where it's like Fenwood doesn't like snowballs or something.
Yeah, it was in the beginning of this episode. The signpost said that.
Yeah.
And the bird poop from Maurice.
Yes.
In the Eskimo Bob, it's not as forgiving because it goes through everything. Like you can't stand a brick; it'll hit you everywhere.
Yeah, that's actually a difference also with this and the compo version. The compo version has the platform penetrating bird poop. This one doesn't. So, although I think that only is like maybe 2 enemies in the compo, but it's just one of those things. It's funny. This is another one of those examples of a room that it messes with some people, because I never really thought of it. But then I watched some people playing this on stream, and they felt trapped in this room because they didn't think of ducking and running.
Oh, okay.
And I think Yeah, it's like now I'm interested to see when. Oh, you
Yeah,
didn't
I
even
didn't
duck and
duck.
run. Oh,
You
there
you
you
have a
go.
couple of these
Yeah.
where it's kind of like you have to go all the way to the edge. There's
Yeah.
some of those jumps.
There is a few of those for sure. I couldn't even remember if because I remember somebody just being completely stuck and they reset the game because they got so
Mm,
frustrated in that room, and I didn't even think of it as frustrating because if you and I suppose doing like walking and ducking isn't normally a mechanic, say in
yeah.
Mario or something, but it's something that it's used a lot in this game and in the first Eskimo Bob. So
I think you have a signpost in one of them where it's like it warns you because there's a jump you must do on a level not in a secret where you have to duck and jump because there's a platform above you, and it does tell
oh
you.
yes, yes, yeah. So
That might
tried to
be
give those
later
little
though.
hints, but I think it was in the third one. I think it was underwater
Hmm.
because it was with those disappearing bricks. I think it just makes it a little easier to give yourself some clearance. This is just cruel, this level, because it's like the
Oh,
first level, the first one. I'm telling you to build a bridge, and then if you build a bridge here, you trap yourself, and then you have to die. I don't know why I'm that cruel, but I
well,
did it.
I'm glad you admitted it. I don't get trapped here, but I struggle a lot with um, not being hit by a yuck clone and building the bridge.
Yeah, and you really don't even need to build much of a bridge because if you
Mhm.
the idea at first was just like, okay, you can go get Magnus and he can jump high enough to get up there,
Yeah.
and so it's like it's it is really kind of mean because it's like first I teach you to build a bridge, then I open this big room and make it really hard to build the bridge in it, and you don't even need it, and if you actually build it, you're gonna trap yourself. So it's like
Oh, I didn't even know you didn't need it.
no,
I
you could like if you use Magnus, he can jump higher than
yeah.
Alfonso, so he can just jump out on this side. So you just walk across and then you come to the other side and you jump right out. And it's actually really quick if you do it that
You're gonna just see me struggle
way.
doing this.
Oh, see that's the whole thing where it's like, yeah, it's intuitive to me, but is it intuitive to anybody else to instruct you to do one thing and then do the exact opposite in the next level? But yeah, and two, I think those yacht clones can be one of the more frustrating enemies because they're not quite as predictable as I mean,
Yeah.
they have a pattern, but they're hoppy. So oh, there you go. So you got to before
Mhm.
trapping yourself. And actually, that was another running change. The very first run, I didn't have that hole because I was thinking, oh well, people can kill themselves with that yuck clone, but if the
Mhm.
yuck clone's trapped outside of the ice and doesn't die, then it
Yeah.
soft locks you. So.
The
Just
yuck
just
clones
those
aren't
little
so
things.
bad. The in the first one, the alien businessmen were more frustrating because you couldn't kill them. They only kind of become
Yeah,
they're a little more
they just kinda
aggressive.
deflect, yeah. Yeah, they're a little bit annoying. There's more enemies in the first one that you couldn't kill too, and I think because of the respawning mechanic, I didn't really think about it as much. And you
Mhm.
have my dry bones rip-offs here. Um, these guys can be kind of annoying because 'cause they'll snipe you from off screen.
Yeah. So one thing I I don't show in here, but people can search on this off. I didn't want to show it, but there you do have warps in the game, uh, pretty well hidden, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I wanted to have things like that just to put in a little bit of replay, like speedrunner value. Um, it's funny because the game is so much bigger feeling than the first game,
Hmm.
but you can also beat it a lot quicker. and and it's because of having those warps and stuff. Like, um, I mean, I'm not like a serious speedrunner. It's like my own game or whatever. Like I can get through this game in under 15 minutes. And
Wow.
the first one, takes me more like it takes probably more like I don't know, 45 minutes or something because I have to
Mhm.
go through every single level. So it's but it's just that's what the warp zone thing does. I wanted to have something like that, sort of like the first Super Mario Brothers, where someone's a pro, they can beat it in 5 minutes, but it still feels like a way bigger game than a regular black box game. So
So I was able to figure out with all these enemies, but what is that evil Kevin? What kind of animal is that?
Okay.
I'm like, is it a
You know,
bear? But no, it doesn't look like a
it's a
bear. Is it
bear.
a big groundhog?
It's supposed to be a bear.
Okay.
There's a character in one of the later episodes, and his name's Kevin the Bear.
Okay.
And he's kind of like it's almost like a Teddy Ruxpin thing. He doesn't really look like this at all, but I made the polar bear enemy,
Mhm.
and then I thought, okay, I'll just make I'll make a brown version of him in a cave, and then calling it Evil Kevin I was just trying to think of silly names at the end of the game for characters, and I was like, okay, do I have any bears in the cartoon? And there was Kevin the Bear, so I was like, okay, Evil Kevin it just sounded funny to me. Like, even little things like I'm trying to think of some of the weird names I had. Like some of them I intentionally tried to make them sound like badly translated Japanese. So it was I'm trying to think.
I wrote them
I think
down.
there's the spider I called Cloud.
Yeah.
That was one of the things because Kumo is the word for both
Mhm.
spider and cloud in Japanese. So.
The skeleton you got Denbon.
Yeah, Denbon, because that was because the level where I think the level was introduced, it says Dem Bones. So then I wrote Denbon to try to make it look like a bad translation of Dem Bones. I don't know. I wanted to make it a little bit quirky and weird, kind of like some of the roll calls in some other games where you'd have a name here or there that was like, that just sounds a little bit off. I always kind of like that.
So what's the deal with goat sandwiches? Or goat sandwiches.
The goat sandwich, that's from the cartoon as well. There's actually kind of like an ongoing like 3 or 4 episode story about a goat sandwich. So that takes place in I think it's like episode like 32 to 36 or something. There's a goat, and he gets made into a sandwich, and then Yuck controls the goat and it uses it for evil, and it's like flying around destroying things. So that's where the goat sandwich comes from. It's a one of these things that I definitely put things in there, inside jokes that only like fans of the original cartoon would get, because it's like, you look at the goat sandwich. I know most people when they played it, they're saying that like, what is that thing? Is it a crab? Like they're trying to figure out like what this like tiny pixelated thing is, and you look at the credits, it says goat sandwich, and that really doesn't help me. But if you were to look at the character, it's actually a pretty good representation of it. If you see the episode.
So what was the reception like from the fans of the Flash cartoon series? Did you get a lot of feedback from them, or anything about these games being released?
Yeah, I think a lot of people. It's funny because it was something I think a lot of people hadn't thought of in a while, and it's just nice seeing the the comments are like, "Whoa, Eskimo Bob, that is something I have not heard of in a long time." And this, I think, just seeing that, like, okay, well, here's this Flash cartoon that I watched when I was in junior high school, and now there's an NES game of it. Like, it's just something that doesn't necessarily make sense. This here is probably my favorite boss fight. I've thought of expanding on this and just releasing it as a little mini game.
Yeah, I could see that if you had a larger play field, or
larger play field. Maybe make it match 3 instead of match 2, or have like get rid of the boss mechanic from it even, and have it. I don't know. I thought it was kind of a fun. I just thought it would be kind of fun to, like, okay, well, now it's a puzzle game, like, and just also with the with some of the other bosses, with like the that snowflake. I just wanted to have bosses that like switched up the genre a bit.
Yeah.
Just to kind of mix things up, so the whole thing didn't feel the same. because that was definitely a weakness in the first one, where it's like the bosses were all the same. It wasn't even a very strong mechanic. It was just it was what it was.
Well, you utilized all the characters fight a boss at least once, and it's based around their attack, and you're like, well, what could Magnus do? And this was a good tactic where you can use his mechanic.
Yeah, exactly. Because I wanted to think of something that was different than just like I could have gone with the whole spaceship that you have to punch reference the first one, but I wanted to do something completely different. So, and even the music, like I used the bonus level music in there because I just thought it was a sillier fight, and I wanted, instead of using because I have a couple other boss themes I use, but that's the only one I use, like the bonus thing, because I just thought I just wanted to keep it light and silly. It's actually funny too now that I'm thinking about it, because you fight the Easter Bunny in this game, and you also beat up the Easter Bunny in Mall Brawl.
Oh yeah, you do.
Yeah, it's funny too now. Just thinking of that, because in the there's the arcade level, I put Eskimo Bob arcade machines in the background, in Mall Brawl, and there's a few people I noticed, and I don't think they knew about these games, but they were like, they saw that there was an Eskimo Bob arcade machine in Mall Brawl, and they're like, "Whoa, that is a really deep cut. You're going back to like 2001's Newgrounds." Like, wondering like why this reference is there. It's just kind of funny.
Well,
this was I think this part here is this was my most trying to make a convoluted secret entrance. But at the same time, it's a little bit obvious.
If you do pay attention, which I didn't notice until I played through, if you look, you can see where all the doors are. They're not completely hidden.
Yeah, I put the little tiny corners in there, and if you play on a CRT, it masks it more than it does on a modern display too. But that was just something I just thought it'd be kind of cute, just to give you a little tiny bit of an indicator.
Yeah.
Kind of like kind of like if you're looking for bomb walls in any Zelda game past the first one, where you can see some cracks. It's not quite as obvious as that, but I wanted to give a little bit of an indicator. And sometimes too, like if it's if you've got that and it's surrounded by other blocks, it's a little harder to notice than say if it's just out in the open.
This is the one about the disappearing blocks where you'll see me struggle with it.
Yeah, this is an example of what I was saying before. It's like, okay, I'll give you a shortcut, but I'm not going to make it easy on you. So it's like you can get to and there's that sort of that cruel trick in the last level too. If somebody collected all the fish, that they're going to hit a dead end and they can't even fight the boss. So
I have fallen for that in this playthrough that we're watching. I successfully take the alternate path, but you gave me that time. It's like, oh, don't be greedy. I'm like, whatever's that about? Oh, and I just trapped myself.
And then it's like, okay, I just put myself through hell, and it's for nothing. I don't know. I mean, there's something. Yeah, there you go. There's another example of the block. To the pattern of them is very. It's not entirely intuitive. It's not like they just go, in a row. Like it's kind of like boom, 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 boom. So, which I obviously did on purpose.
Moving left to right on the same level is not a problem, because the next block, it always appears next to the one that disappeared. But when you're jumping from one bank to the other, then it's like, I can't plan this.
Yeah, it makes it this one too, I just kind of, it's almost just like you got to get through as fast as you can, otherwise the timing's bad.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. It's sort of a simple mechanic. I don't know. Some of them, it's kind of like I try to lay a trap for the player. It's like, did it work? I don't know. It's one of those things. It's weird when trying to design anything puzzly, because it's sometimes it's hard to make a puzzle if you already know the solution to it.
Yeah.
So it's like, then you don't really know how good of a puzzle it is till you get someone else to try to figure it out. Um, and then just where all the characters have a bit more of that combat in them, it was a lot easier to, to lean on that combat base.
Yeah, for the puzzles or when you're getting feedback, it's hard too because you can't always rely on one person. So
Yeah,
I
that's
play
true.
test for some homebrewers, and I'll tell them, or they'll watch my feedback, like, and they're like, I guess I have to make that more obvious. And I'm like, I struggled with it, but don't get another opinion because maybe it's just not obvious to me.
Yeah, and I think some of it too, this game, it has a lot of hints, and the hints where the first one had no hints at all. So I think
Yeah.
that inherently kind of makes it feel more puzzly when you're not being constantly dropped hints,
Yeah.
hey, watch for this or whatever, because that can almost make it a little bit too easy at times. that was a great death. Oh man.
The puzzle difference between the first and the second one, you switch characters more. Even there's only two characters, or the one as much as I played for Bob and Alfonso, the levels you could switch between them many times to find your solution. Whereas in Alfonso, you might switch twice in a level.
Yeah, that's true. And I think, I don't know, there's just something, even with the level design, I think I tried to make the levels look more like terrain than a puzzle. Like a lot of the levels in the first game were they'd be shaped like a word or trying to make a picture or something.
Yeah.
And I did that a lot in the first game. I didn't really do that so much in this one, where it was more just kind of like building terrain.
Yeah.
And I think some of it might just be the graphical style, where I kind of, it's just a little bit upgraded from the original. So it's just kind of how I felt like doing it. And as well too, like there's a lot more levels in this one. And I mean, even, like the first one, there's like 64 levels in the game, and I mean that's a pretty decent number of levels. And then I thought with the sequel, I'm like, okay, I got to make more. So, because I don't know, just something about making a sequel that has the same number of levels, you kind of want to push it a little further.
Yeah.
So this one, I think, what is there? There's like 90, I think. Close to 100 if you count the secret areas. Where there are the secret areas and stuff, it makes it a little bit iffier. Like, what counts as a level? Does a boss fight? Does a secret area? I don't know. But more or less 90-ish. I think there's 95. Yeah, there's 95 of the fish, because there's one of those in each level plus each secret area.
I do appreciate that. I touched upon it a couple times, but I do appreciate the games play differently. So you can tell this is a sequel to Eskimo Bob. The character, the source is the same, similar look. They play similar in a way, but a lot of times people are like, with a sequel, they're like, oh, I like the first one so much, I just want more of that. And you could have easily just made 100 more levels of Eskimo Bob, but the different strategy gives me, like, I can clearly think, oh, I feel like playing Eskimo Bob, or I feel like playing Alfonso's Adventure, because they ultimately do play differently.
Yeah, and you kind of get that, say, with the... I think a lot of NES games actually did a pretty good job of that, where you have... say like the Super Mario Brothers games, if you count it as we saw it here, as like the Super Mario 1, 2, and 3, the three of them are very different games.
Yeah.
As opposed to in Japan, where the second one was just kind of like hard mode level path for the first one. And I think that actually put a lot more replay value into like all three of those games, because each have a unique experience, as opposed to, say, the Mega Man games, where if I feel like playing Mega Man, I'm going to play Mega Man 2 or 3. And the rest of them, I kind of like, I might play them every once in a while, but then it's like, yeah, I'm going to go back to the ones that I really liked, because they're all extreme. Like they are kind of more of that sort of level pack idea, where they maybe add one new mechanic per game, and that was about it.
That's I guess it's true because out of the 6 Mega Mans, I really like number 2. I'll play number 2. I'll never really play 3 that much because I find it just way too similar to 2. But I'll play 4 because it's different. You know, you have the charge mechanic. I guess 2 and 4 I would play the most.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, I don't know, it's just kind of that thing where it's like, you know, you have if it's too similar, a lot of the time you kind of fall into that like, okay, well, I'll play it once and then, but it doesn't. At first you think, okay, I want to play more of the same, but then if it's not different enough, it's not as engaging. So you want to give yourself something else to do. I'm sorry, I'm laughing every time you laugh. That one was pretty great too.
Well, like I recorded this once before this, and I was pretty happy with it. But I'm like, you know what? I'll play through it again so I can cut down the amount of deaths. So if I played the other one, you'd probably be laughing a lot more because I think I cut off about 18 minutes of play
that's not
in
bad.
this session. So that's a lot of deaths that I cut out.
Yeah. This section's pretty funny, I thought, because where I added sort of at the top of the screen those the spikes, but you can never reach them. So it's,
I was like, I'm always so careful. I'm like,
so it's like, I don't know, it just kind of like artificially makes you careful when it's like you can't actually reach them, and it just makes it feel more threatening to see spikes at the top of the screen. That's basically why I put them there. It's like, it feels more like a boss level. This guy, the first run of the carts, there was a glitch with him too, and it was like this really oddly specific glitch where if you hit him on the exact frame that one of his little guys was respawning, it would lock the game. And it was like, I can't even remember what caused it, but it was just one of these really weird, oddly specific things, because it's like the game was checking to make sure all the enemies are off screen, but there's another enemy that spawned exactly at that frame.
I haven't run into that, and I'm assuming I have a first run because I'm playing on the limited edition Kickstarter one.
Well, it's funny because this is something I actually noticed while I was shipping them out. So it made like, because where you've got that hole, I think I fixed it where that hole was in the ground. Because if that hole, I think, because I actually went through and reflashed all the ones that I hadn't shipped yet because I was that bothered with it. And I mean, we're talking, you know, I mean, it's so oddly, like weirdly specific that you have to, you know, kill an enemy exactly as another enemy is respawning, which the odds of that is like, I didn't run into it. So while I was testing, but I really early on, someone was streaming the ROM and ran into it, and I went through and changed it. There was that hole, and I can't, and I honestly probably should, if I was a nice person, put some sort of version number on the title screen or something for posterity and for you know, so that people can tell it apart. But it's like, no, there's just this slightly different version of the ROM, and it's like, it's in the same production run. Even it's just happened to be I shipped it 2 days earlier.
Now you're gonna have Bo searching for this mysterious first release with a graphic with a glitch in the game.
Yeah, and then trying to trigger this glitch that, you know, to do it, you probably have to go into an emulator and like set the frame skip to like certain frames.
This level's a little bit more similar to Eskimo Bob in a sense.
It is, but you can see too the design of it. It's like I tried to make it look like a yuck face.
Yeah.
It's like, so it has that, like, you know, I'm drawing a picture and trying to get people to. And it's funny because this wasn't actually one of the earlier levels that I designed. It was just, you know, I think honestly it was like I got to this point and thought, you know what, I'm gonna start trying to get a little bit more puzzly, because there's a few more of those puzzly levels in this, just in the castle area and stuff in general too. or just some I don't know, other things to try to frustrate people too.
So the character, the girl, and I don't think it aligns. I think I looked up the dates, but I was like, and then she has this phrase, she's like, my steel, and I'm like, I wonder if this is based off Kill Bill. Blonde hair, she has a sword, but then I think I looked at the dates, and I think yours predates Kill Bill.
Yeah, it might. I'm trying to think. She was, let me think. I mean, the name, the girl, it was basically because we, like, her character originally, it was just like there was a Valentine's episode, and we just, okay, we'll have a girl that Bob's interested in, or whatever. And then we never actually gave her a name. It was just like a one-shot character, and I got my sister to say Teehee, and that was like that was the whole thing. So then people were asking like, "Where's the girl? We need the girl back." So because she didn't have a name, because it was just sort of a like we'll show her for 12 seconds character, but people were asking for her back, so that's what I think it was episode 26. We called it the return of the girl. Never actually gave her a name, and she was actually like an important character in that episode, but it was just kind of like, okay, she doesn't have a name, she's too cool for a name, like they don't need to know her name, she's that cool is how we thought of it. I don't know. But then it's funny when this came out, there's like I think it's just it's not 2001, so people think about stuff differently. So there's a few people that are like, wow, he didn't even name the female character, he literally just called her the girl. What's up with this? It's like, it wasn't actually meant to be, it was because the intention at first was almost like, okay, it's like it was almost to keep her mysterious, like, okay, yeah, she's too cool for a name. She's like, we just know her as she is. But
do you get many comments about that? Like people that are watching the series now, do you get comments about the material or anything instead of from the fans that watch it back in the day?
I mean, there's some people. It's funny, like there's people who will send me comments or something who like weren't even born when it came out, and that's what I think is funny. It's like because it's like, when I see someone and they have 2006 in their username, then it's like, okay, well they're a teenager and they're commenting on something that I made in 2001, like, so it's pretty funny to see that, because it's got to, and I think too, it's like it's not necessarily like a lot of the references and jokes in it were not so much like, it was more just sort of random silliness, and a lot of it was kind of just, a lot of it even was just like inside jokes between me and my brother and our friends, and it was like, okay, we're just going to like put an inside joke in here that nobody else but us understands, so it just comes off like to other people as like this complete non sequitur, and then it just kind of becomes funny because it is. And I think that was something that it happened a lot, because it's just kind of, I don't know, it's kind of like I know that I'm in on this joke. Other people don't know about it, but people would ask questions. Like I would put like there was these characters, they're called the Colorins, and they just show up at the end of this one episode, and they're like, "We're the Colorins." Okay, well, bye. And I don't even explain it, but there were these sort of, and it was based on these little crafts that my brother and I made, and we like these little kind of figures we made out of toilet paper tubes when we were kids, and we had kind of made our own little. This is when we were maybe 10 years old, just playing around making crafts with construction paper and toilet paper tubes. So it's like kind of throwing a reference to something like that obscurely weird, and then people watching it in like 2001 were like, well, who are these characters? We need to know more about them. What are they from? And to me, it was just kind of hilarious, because I'm like, it's something I made out of construction paper when I was 10. So
I did like this fake out here where you fight the mid boss, and like when I got to it, I'm like, oh, that's it, and then I was like, oh, there it is, and then these are where your the harder levels happen.
Yeah, And I almost kind of wish I had made a few more of the harder levels, but I mean, it is what it is. It's hard to judge what's hard or not when I'm making it, and a lot of it too. Some of the very last levels that I designed weren't even at the end of the game. It's kind of like I would make the levels and then just sort of think, okay, that wasn't as hard as I thought, so I'm just going to shuffle that in here somewhere and move one of the other ones up towards the end. So there's definitely a very deliberate shuffling of, this level is hard, this level's not, that kind of thing.
We have 2 levels coming up where these are going to be my frustration, where I'm like, Tom, and it's this one, and I think it's the last one.
Where I promise, but no. Yeah, it's like just these. Yeah, this one's fun. This one is very, I think, too, in line with the first game. This is
the first, not getting to this point and avoiding the narwhal. It's getting on the second, the bottom run, and it's these snow blocks.
Yeah, exactly. But I feel like this is the sort of thing that was more of a challenge that would have been in line with what I would have put in the first game. Even though I didn't have that disappearing block mechanic, I think having the narwhals, having that other stuff going on, you got through it not too bad.
Well, yeah, because this was the second playthrough that I recorded. The first one, you see me die like 8 times.
Yeah, this level, I remember feeling pretty proud with myself about the little galaxy swirls in the sky.
You're gonna see. I think you're gonna see me that a couple times with like timing Fenton up these stairs. Oh, sorry, not Fenton. Fenwood. I call him Fenton. Yeah. Fenton this whole time.
Now that character's name, that's actually that's the name of a street that's sort of like around the corner from where I grew up. It was called Fenwood Drive, and I always just thought it was a funny name because the subdivision or whatever, it was called Fernwood Estates, but then the street was named Fenwood Drive, and I always just kind of assumed when I was a kid that they made a typo on the street sign and just never bothered to fix it. So we just named I named the character after that sign because I thought it was funny. But again, that's the sort of thing that's a really inside joke that unless you grew up living near my parents' house, you wouldn't understand it.
I think Haunted Halloween, they kind of they insert a lot of local jokes in their game as well. Being in Pittsburgh.
I think it's an easy thing to do. Although I think if it's in Pittsburgh, you probably get a lot wider of an audience than living in like rural Nova Scotia. Like you put things that are a reference to a community of that's like a few thousand people. It's but there's just always that hometown pride, no matter how big where you're from is. You want to put something to reference your hometown, I think.
Yeah, I guess probably everyone has something in my hometown. I don't know if this is how common it is, but usually what you call your business district is usually like downtown. But for whatever reason, in my hometown, it's uptown. And I don't know why, but that's what it's called, uptown.
Yeah, because we get downtown. I always thought it was downtown.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, that's where, like you got the kind of that's where you get your comic book shop and your all that kind of stuff. Or your it's kind of where you get like the locally owned shops more so than the big box stores. If that makes sense. That's what I think of when I think of downtown.
I think it was called uptown because I think there's an elevation change. I think it's a higher elevation.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's very subtle, but that's the only thing I can think of why it's called uptown.
Well, there's a lot of downtowns here, kind of near waterfronts and stuff like that. But I don't know. Maybe that's the difference. Maybe it really is. Yeah. Because I'm thinking we've got downtown, that's near the river, and then you got up the hill, and that's kind of where the rich people live. I don't know. That's just what it is. So we're getting close to the end here.
Yep.
Actually, this is pretty good. You haven't game overed and done the whole my extremely cruel trick of getting rid of all of your.
You do see it. I get to the final boss and I game over. I almost made it.
Yeah, I think the whole golden fish collection, honestly, that's something I feel like I should have done better. But it literally was just kind of an afterthought. It wasn't something that I originally was planning for. It was originally those were just kind of like, okay, I'll have a 1-up at each level. And then I thought having this entire game long collection thing, thought that could be kind of fun. But I didn't have the mechanic of being able to re-enter levels, and then we didn't. And I think there was some kind of reason why I didn't have that, some sort of limitation. Like I didn't use any, it's where it was just Color Dreams. I was basically using like every available bite in RAM, so I just didn't have. So to have that check to see if the level was beat or not, I think I just was out of space for it, and then it
does make it more of a challenge if you want to do the all fish.
Yeah, it makes the all fish challenge a lot harder. And then the game over thing, I don't know what I was thinking. I was just like, yeah, I should just make it kill your fish count, because I felt like there was no punishment for getting a game over where you had the continue option. I was like, I got to give something. So it's not even a real punishment. It's more just like a moral, like something to demoralize you a little bit or something. I don't know. But then there's a lot of people I noticed too that'd be like, okay, I am never going to try that 95 fish challenge because...
Oh, that's what it is, 95? I thought it was thought it was going to be 100.
Yeah.
Oh, 95 fish.
Yeah.
I think it gives you a percentage at the end.
Yeah, it gives you a percentage at the end. There's 95 total. It shows you on the map screen how many you have. Like right now, you got 50 of 95. So it's. And then it gives you the percentage, which I mean, I don't think I've seen a playthrough that hasn't said 0%. So, which I think a lot of it is just to do with like it's the continue option is forgiving enough that it's like you don't feel that, you don't feel like, oh man, I lost all my fish, I better go get my old password, because that's really all it would take.
Yeah,
but
I think because you're seeing more and more speedrunners pay attention to homebrews, you may see that in the future where someone's the category is all fish or something.
That's true. And there is actually a little bit of a reward if you collect all fish.
This is my other level that I was like, Thomas!
Yeah, this one I specifically was like, okay, this is the last level before the final boss. I need to be mean and do something relatively cruel here. So, and then I thought having 95 fish would be kind of fun because that's how many goldfish are in the whole game. So I'd make a level that has that many regular fish. Kind of tie it all together. I don't know. Yeah, those little spirit things are annoying because it's kind of like you get the fly mechanic, but then you can't kill it. And the flies are annoying enough as it is because they're the Medusa head mechanic. So it's like, because I think these have a wider path. They're a little more swoopy. I think I was just proud of myself that I figured out that kind of sine curve. Had to use it. And it's kind of like, okay, you did it once, now do it again.
And this one's a little bit more, this one's a harder section because
yeah, it's a little bit less it's a little bit less nice in the placement of the disappearing bricks. Oh.
I'm pretty sure I get down to 1 life when I enter the boss, so you're going to see 2 more deaths.
Oh, that's not that bad. Yeah, and that's something too. I think the first game, I don't think it had a continue option. I think you had to choose the password, and people just found
Yeah.
it a little bit annoying when they were dying to have to go to the title screen, especially against the final boss. I know a lot of people played through the whole thing, and then they just drained all their lives at that final boss. And then I had that cruel life counter, and it doesn't even show the proper ending if you don't get 100. If you died more than 100 times.
Oh.
So it's like I have this. So I'm not sure what your death count was last time you played or anything, but there's sort of a. And then there's a no death ending as well, which is just like a single line of text.
Someone's like, "That's it."
Pretty much. I think it says like "you are cool" or something like that. Like it's.
Well, that is the ultimate tribute to the show. Then,
Yeah, exactly.
Eskimo Bob is cool.
It's like I think it's like perfect. You were cool, and that's like all it says. And other than that, it's the regular ending scene. But if you've died more than 100 times, you don't get to see the scene where you save the skill. It just shows it just shows the credit roll without some of the more interesting parts. So I don't know. I kind of liked it at the time, but I'm not sure how much of a fan I am of the punishing ending. I don't know. I kind of go back and forth on how I feel about that kind of stuff. There you go.
Here we go into the final boss.
It's kind of like I do something that punishes people once, and then I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I feel like doing that again. It's like you got to think of new ways to do it. I don't know. There's always the people like I did it, then they complain about it. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. Kind of like with Mall Brawl, it was definitely the shopping cart level.
That wasn't so bad. It was more forgiving than like Battletoads or anything.
Yes. Thank you. I don't know if you saw the Nintendo Life review of that game. That was like the first big review site to review a game that I had released. And that was the first thing. That was the first review I saw, and then they like gave it 6 out of 10, and it was basically they're like, it's a good game, but there's the shopping cart level is such a bad level that it's patched out of the game entirely. Or I was like, it's like
I'm stuck. I'm stuck in Molval right now. I have to go back to it. I'm stuck at the end where it's like basically the boss rush.
Oh,
I'm like, oh, you.
Yeah. Actually, now that one you can blame Justin, who was was my partner. Justin from Interrobang. He was my partner for that game, and he was the one who said like, okay, I think we should like originally it did have like it would save at chapter 9, and right before we put the game out, he's like, you know what? I think we should make people do the boss rush again. And I'm like, are you sure? He's like, you know what? I don't think on the NES they would have let you keep fighting the same boss. I think they would do the boss rush. The boss rush again.
It's hard to say that.
Yeah, so I was like, he's like, I just think that the final boss is too easy, and you need to. And it's funny because I always found that last fight with the Shadow Jane Bob to be like, as far as the regular like melee fight, to me it's the most challenging one, and that's how I wanted to make it. But he thought it was too easy, and it's funny. But that's that whole different perspective thing. So that's where we get. So it turned into we'll make them do that boss rush again, which just happens to be like, because it's all bosses. It's like the longest level in the game. So that's like 10 minutes of gameplay that you got to replay if you die at the boss. But that's how it shipped. It is what it is. I don't know. I'm okay with it. And then there's so you haven't beat it yet, because there's also a hard mode when you beat that game. So, which was again that was kind of the made for me, where it was like, okay, I can get through the whole game in like a half hour. I need something that's gonna take me some time. So I kind of just like I made this hard mode. I was like, how long is this gonna take me? And it took me about 5 hours to get through it. I was like, okay, perfect.
I can see the need for it, because like, even though I'm struggling with the end, it is forgiving because you got the two characters you can flip between. They regenerate their health.
Exactly, and that's the biggest part of you no longer have the health regeneration. So that's taken away from you in hard mode, as well as different enemy placement, that kind of stuff. So, but it changes it up. I
So
always
the
like this ending.
oh
It's like
yeah.
the very traditional, you beat the game, now you walk left until you get to the start. Like, I'm always a fan of those. Honestly, looking back on it, this is like the most cliched ending for an NES game. Walk left till you get back to the start of the game, and then there's the enemy roll call. Like, but there's something to be said about it too. Lurchin. Yeah, like just little things like that. I don't know why I put that L there. Or Purin and Neneki. I don't even remember what that means, but I called them that. Sir Statue. Very that's kind of Kirby-ish sounding. Anglerette. That was a good one. Such a stupid name. Oh man. The funny thing about angler and anglerette, like I don't know how much you know about anglerfish biology, but the large ones are the females and the little
Oh
ones
really?
are the male. So it's like I call it an angler and then I call the little ones anglerettes. But biologically those would be the male ones. So it's just yeah. And there's
So
the
it showed on there the you give the boss rush a password. So I don't know if you want me to kind of out or leave it, but
yeah, I mean we could do the boss rush if you want to.
no, I meant to leave it there so the people they have the
Oh,
password.
sure. Doesn't matter. You can have the password. There's a couple other secret passwords in there too. I don't know if anyone's seen them yet, but there's you beat boss rush 100%. There's a code, and then there's another one when you beat the game with 100% fish. So I think, or the boss rush is boss rush with no deaths, and beat the game with all fish. And there's like 2 other passwords for like other modes. I don't know if anyone's unlocked those yet or not. I don't know. But that's stuff that's in there. So people want to know, they can try it out. Boss Rush 100% might be a little more attainable. Or without deaths, Boss Rush with no deaths. Probably the more attainable of the two, like quickly, but yeah, that's it.
It's awesome. It's a fun game, and people can still get it. You're still selling it digitally. Um, I think you still have Alfonzo for sale on your website.
No, I'm all out. I might do another production run at some point. I've been kind of toying with the idea of like a 2-pack cart that has both of the games.
Okay.
I think that'd be a cool thing. But haven't actually gotten around to it yet because it costs some money. Might have to do pre-orders and do an interest check for it or something, because just you know funding a cart run up front can be a little pricey, but
Yeah.
that just is what it is. I think most people know that kind of thing, but I might wait till I was thinking of waiting once Paul's boards are ready, the multi-mapper boards or whatever, then maybe I can sort of squash both games into a larger ROM and do something like that. But until then, I mean, there's a digital version on Steam. There's there's the ROM. Like it's on Steam and itch.io both, and you get the ROM either way. So I mean, so whether you'd rather play it with the the Unity emulator that I put together, or if you just want to
Mhm.
put the ROM on a flash card, or however you want to do it, the options are all there. Um, there's some console ports that should be coming out soonish. I don't know exactly when yet, but it's going to be coming out on Switch and Xbox.
Oh, that's exciting.
So that's cool. So those should come out next few months or so. I've been working on those as well, so I'll be announcing a release date when that happens. So Yeah, there was originally going to be a 3DS version, which strangely enough, it was a lot harder to work with 3DS, and
Hmm.
so and the longer it gets, the less motivation I have to try to release something on 3DS right now. In 2021, it feels almost redundant. So, and I have
That
not
that would
done
be
the
that would
last
be
couple.
pretty cool to do, but I can understand it's like the 3DS is really at the end of its
Yeah,
life.
it's kind of like if I already have the game running on Switch, do I need it on 3DS? Like, do most people who had a 3DS have a Switch at this point? Probably. I don't know. Um, I know there were some people because it was mentioned as a stretch goal in the Kickstarter, so
Mhm.
I'll probably have to message some people and see. Although a lot of those people already have a like a Steam code or something at this point too. So I mean,
The
everybody has been given the game in some form.
Yeah.
But yeah, the idea I had of like, okay, I'll just put an NES emulator on 3DS and run it was easier said than done. And plus, I know like new 3DS is supposed to support Unity, so I was like, okay, I'll just put the Unity version on there, and it's didn't work out quite like I thought it would. There are a lot more limitations than I expected for 3DS. So
There is, and I watched a video recently that discusses it, like what the strengths of the 3DS are, like how it does so much with little tech, and but then how those limitations are, and it comes down to the dual screens, and they operate differently between their 2D and 3D graphics.
yeah, so it's yeah, it's an interesting system. It's cool having like I have the dev unit. It's been fun to use it. You know, I'm not saying I'll never do it, but I it almost got to the point where I felt like if I was going to do this, rather than have it run through an emulator, it would make more sense to do a port, and then but that's going to take a lot more time. So
Yeah.
then it was like, well, I can, I can get I have access to be able to do it on say Xbox. Like I applied for Xbox, I was accepted for Xbox to do Alfonzo, and then I got access to be able to do it for Switch as well. Um, so those are coming. Hopefully soon. I'm basically like as far as from the code perspective, I'm basically done. Just have a couple of minor little things that I got to figure out with the Xbox version. But once it's ready, I'll pull the trigger on both of them and let people know. But yeah,
The the sequel that you may do, so it's a trilogy. If you did go with something, you're saying Metrovania 3DS with the double screen and map and everything, but it's a lot of work and that's a ways
maybe.
out.
Yeah, that's true. So it's like, and I'm not even 100% sure if I was going to go Metroidvania, but I just thought it'd be be a weird idea to be like, what would a Metroidvania puzzle platformer be like? Like it just kind of it would like I almost had sort of an idea of like it would still keep that kind of two screen puzzle area mechanic, but then instead of having an actual map, like you have to, you just walk to the next screen. But then you might have to backtrack if you get a different character with an ability that you couldn't get through a door in a previous screen or something. I don't know. Like there's I don't give all the ideas out because I got some other mechanics involved, but I just think it'd be a cool twist for this type of game. I'm not really sure if it's been done quite like that, but I don't know. It's just something I've been thinking about.
So, anything else planned for the series? Are you going to go back to the cartoon, or it's really you're maybe looking for that last game?
I mean, I'd love to do another episode or two of the cartoon at some point. I'm not sure when. I probably have to get my brother Alan involved in it too. He hasn't really been involved with the NES games as much, but I'm trying to get him in on some projects with me. So maybe once we start working together more, I can we can knock out another episode or two. I mean, they all use the same old assets, so it's not
Yeah.
that much work. I mean, it's a lot less work than to put a Flash cartoon together than it is to make an NES. So it'd be fun to do. But yeah, who
So
knows?
before we kind of wrap it up, now that we kind of watched the gameplay of Alfonso, you kind of you saw refreshed about some of your work and my struggles. Um, Overall, happy with it, or is there anything you would have done differently now? Or
I mean, I feel pretty happy with it. Aside from, there's the occasional thing here or there that I'm like, yeah, it was a little bit mean. But it's like I might have done that differently if I did it now, but I don't know
yeah,
if I necessarily go back and change it. You know, some things it's just like you just kind of got to let it be as it is, and
yeah,
it's weird because too like I don't know how other people feel. But it's like I played it so much in my own like I played through it so much myself that to me it almost just feels like a in a weird way, and I don't want to. It feels weird to say this about your own game, but it has that kind of classic feel to it because it's like I know it so intimately, like I would know games that I grew up with. Um, so it has that it's this weird thing where you almost have nostalgia for your own creation, which is a
mm.
weird feeling, but it's um I don't know. I really the fact that this game and the first Eskimo Bob even exist is it's sort of one of those things I kind of wish I could just, hop in a time machine, tell my 19-year-old self, you know, yeah, this flash cartoon you're making right now, you're gonna do some NES games and people are actually gonna buy them. Like, so it's funny because we even joked about it at the time. Like if we ever get to make a video game, we should make it NES game. But, I think the homebrew thing wasn't as, back in 2001 wasn't as accessible as it is
Yeah,
now. So, we were into the ROM hacking and stuff back then, but I didn't wanna do a ROM hack, like, that's somebody else's work. I wanted to do it from scratch myself, so and I mean, I had done some ROM hacks and translations, stuff like that, but when it came to my own characters, like, yeah, I wanna keep my own characters, my own work. So, being able to fulfill that even years later was, it's pretty cool.
very cool. So if you want to connect with you, see what you're working on, is there anywhere people can go to interact with you or just get updates?
Yeah, I got my website, spoonybar.ca. I'll, usually post updates on new projects and stuff there. Um, Twitter, I'm Spoonybar Toma on both, like, Twitter, Instagram, basically any social media, it's Spoonybar Toma. Um, that's probably the best way if you wanna follow me and see what's going on.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
thanks, Thomas, for offering your time and your insight into the game. It was great to catch up with you and see what you had to say.
Yeah, no, it was a good time. It was, pretty fun watching the whole playthrough.
All right, Thomas. We'll see you again on a future project.
Sounds good. All right, later.